Why hello there ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time coming and a long time of procrastination. Now I have no excuse for the delay of this video other than the engrossing read of Roadside Picnic. Now this video won't have a lot of details from Roadside Picnic, but the understanding of the inspiration rather. And we'll talk about it a little bit later on. This also allowed a bunch of you to post your theories in the comment section of part 2. But with all that being said, Into the Radius 2 is around the corner. In the previous 2 parts, we delved into the bare bones of the lore of the Radius. And nearing the end, we formulated some theories and left questions that we hope to answer today. Or theorize more, which is more than likely. If you haven't watched the previous parts, I highly suggest you do. Now I'm positive I will miss some bits of theory or information in general, so feel free to tell me in the comments or join my Twitch chat. I'm always down to talk about the lore of the Radius. And before we talk lore, I am now partnered with Glitch Energy, the tastiest gaming energy drink you can find on the market. Whether you're grinding through intense raids within Ghost of Tabor or other games like Into the Radius, or just enjoying a chill gaming session, Glitch Energy has got you covered. It is super delicious, and if you want to give it a shot, you can try their starter kit, or if you trust me enough, you can get the Ghost of Tabor flavor skill issue. It is my favorite so far. I've been drinking it during every stream so far, and if you want to try it out, go to glitchenergy.com and use my code SOUL at checkout for 20% off your order. You won't regret it.
The GOT flavor is absolutely bombing.
I welcome you to part 3, the final part of the lore series for Into the Radius. Let's start with the enemies within the Radius, each one more mysterious and unsettling than the last. There's an interesting theory regarding the Fragments, one that I actually kind of like, and there is some quote-unquote proof within the game in Explorer 12's notes. It stated that the previous explorers have seen the faces of past inhabitants and deceased Soviet soldiers. With most carcasses having caved-in faces, these entities attempt to resemble humans, or they are the fragmentations of their previous lives, yet turned against us from the Radius.
UNPSC, Explorer 12, Log 8-13, Fragments. Fragments are humanoid in appearance, although it is unclear whether the material they are composed of is biological in origin. We have observed over time that the bodies of fragments have a texture reminiscent similar to rubber and of wool, and though they are not as warm as living human beings, their body temperature is higher than that of inanimate objects. This debunks a myth prevalent in the first few months after the event among the changed and even some UNPSC scientists that fragments are reanimated corpses. There is, however, a new and more dangerous myth circulating. A few explorers claim to have recognized missing colleagues among fragments and insist that, therefore, at least some fragments are former change. One explorer reported killing a fragment that had the features of his romantic partner who had disappeared sometime prior. He subsequently received extensive counseling for PTSD, which unfortunately seemed to have been insufficient, as he eventually cut off contact with the UNPSC and other explorers and is presumed defunct. Such are the unfortunate consequences of unfounded speculation about the nature of the zone phenomenon. Other field researchers I have interviewed are in agreement with the UNPSC that fragments are not in fact former changed. I advise explorers to set aside any doubts on this account and defend themselves as necessary when encountering these dangerous creatures.
What of the mimics? The mimics are obviously not humans. There is only a resemblance to humans that the mimics successfully achieve. Mimicry is not to become, it is to imitate. But why call it a mimic if it's just a fragment of a human being? Like the classic mimics from games like Dungeons & Dragons or Dark Souls, these creatures excel in imitation rather than becoming like humans. Mimics in Into the Radius mimic what they've heard, seen, and done. In the first video, I theorized that the mimics could have embodied previous personnel, yet that does not fit their name. Unlike fragments, they do not have a piece of humanity in their cores. Mimicking former life is all they can achieve. They look like humans, talk like humans, act like humans, use weaponry like humans. A perfect mimicry, but a less intelligent version, similar to the Predator, which is a really weird connection. The Predator in the movies using previously said words to communicate, but the Predator knows the origins or the meaning. But These mimics do not, hence the repeated phrases of,
Is Max coming out to play?
There's also the talk of their texture, their bodies. Each entity showcases different types. A shard-like body for the fragments, phantoms, a jigsaw of triangles for the seekers, smooth and fluid-like for the sliders, and others pulsating with some small dark shapes that connect to a mimic, spawn, and BTR. The final three are mimics entirely, mimicking creatures, vehicles, or life to the best of its ability. All creatures, though, are technically mimics, existing within a hierarchy or birthing cycle. It starts with a spawn, evolves into phantoms, fragments, mimics, and finally sliders. At least this could be one of the birthing cycles. It's like the fragments are the start of each hardy development, deciding what the particular entity will become. Once the entity becomes a fragment, the core exists, yet in another more advanced enemies, they do not have these cores. What if the fragment's cores devolve the human memory, the human fragmentation, into a monstrosity for the Radius to control further? But what are the odd ones out? The spawn and BTR. Now the spawn, either spawn from the Radius's interpretation of spiders, squid, octopus, or maybe even tumbleweed. The spawn have also been called both tumbleweed and spiders from notes within the game. With its same mimicry textures, it simply crawls at hot velocities, yet if my fragment theory is incorrect, what of a spawn being the infantile state for mimics? And as for the BTR, it also mimics its real-life counterpart, clearly. But how would the spawn turn into a BTR? Maybe just time. But as for Explorer 61, we aren't real, but rather a broken cog in a system of mindless anomalies. It's a plausible theory that Explorer 61 is created by the god of the Radius, explaining its absence. Shooting yourself at the end of the game could be seen as a mimic's cry. We could have developed our own mind, quote-unquote, from a previous existence that could have been an actual Explorer 61. Even the UNPSC would have known we were a mimic of some kind, as in the beginning we were missing or have been absent from some time, according to the security. Now, Orange Coat Guys 9215 says his theory is that the player is not a mimic, but the sound of the mimic cry is the god being upset. Katya still remains intact. While it's an interesting theory, there are many aspects connecting to us to being an entity from the Radius. The notes, the slight hints, us being there before, our bodies being left behind upon death, and so on. But again, still an interesting theory. Now, let's dive into the inspiration behind the game, Roadside Picnic. It's a science fiction novel that paints a vivid picture of an advanced civilization rather than an outside phenomenon. This civilization is so advanced that it could be connected to a multi-dimensional universe. Now, there are many similarities within the book, from the zone, the scientific experiments, to alien life forms. The alien life in the novel were visitors that had left behind global locations, 6 of them to be exact, and they were all called the zones, artifacts that achieved odd anomalous actions and anomalies just like Into the Radius that were capable of crushing humans. You can probably make the connections to the game at this point. This is the heart of the stalker genre. A compelling theory is that the orb in the game is an interstellar ship connecting it to alien life, which seems to be somewhat common within the book. The start of the Radius anomaly within the game is from an asteroid that could have actually been an alien ship crash landing and the government hiding it from everybody. It's still speculation. The orb's presence hints at a deeper connection to the universe, again, possibly interstellar travel or communication with alien life. Now the largest theory within the Into the Radius community, the mirror world, a dimension that connects to each other unknowingly. I've seen this theory appear quite often within the Radius community, and I tend to believe it as I play the game, as I read for the game, but with more twists. There is a split somewhere, a world where the UNPSC exists along with Explorer 61 and where the Red Orb resides, a treacherous world, dangerous anomalies, and cold entities. But there's another world, which I'll call the Mirror World, or Mirrored Worlds. This Mirror World, or worlds, is stacked on top of ours and could be described as a normal world like ours, the one we live in, a parallel world, or even different worlds or timelines, but these worlds are closely tied together and even colluding with each other. For instance, have you ever been close to a truck and suddenly hear a motor or an engine drive by you, but saw nothing, or been in the Pachor's castle and heard the hooves of horses that weren't actually there? It seems as though some of these sounds from the mirrored world seep through to ours, the one we traverse. The destroyed train station in Pervame can be heard bustling with train cars and footsteps whenever you're near it. And at the location of a farewell feast, you can hear wedding guests speaking and laughing together, even though they appeared to be in the mirrored world, yet they all appear to us as ashen statues. This could be a pause in time, where people are frozen for us, yet only for moments. Yet at the farewell feast, as we drop items for their party, some being lethal grenades, an explosion occurs, an artifact appears, and the note stating people have perished from something that came from nowhere. We are destroying a family within a different timeline, or world, or both. We have some effect over what happens in the mirrored worlds. Another example, a note mentions an anomaly field in a collapsed building in the southwestern part of Balatki village. It appears as if all the reflector anomalies have destroyed most of the buildings in our world, but in the mirrored world, it still stands relatively unharmed by time. So to answer Draymond 5064, it could have very well been a possibility that we, as an anomaly for the mirrored world, is heavily destroying their world, unintentionally of course, and also killing their inhabitants. We are affecting their world. This theory could be debunked by a single note mentioning the KGB, as the timeline doesn't add up, but as I stated, mirrored worlds and timelines, if we think we are affecting different timelines and worlds, it is still quite plausible. Your fave toaster says, I think the radius is a singularity, a point of both simultaneous existence and non-existence of time, space, and possibility. All collapse is one, yet never truly existent. This would also explain the tide. As a singularity would expel matter in different ways at different times, thoughts, feelings, or memories. You are a part of the singularity in some way, shape, or form, a stitch from the parts, but never quite whole. An interesting theory, and one that correlates to the mirrored world theory quite well, actually, especially if it's connected to different timelines. This singularity, the single point, the red orb, this black hole, is the connection to other worlds, the bridge. As a matter of fact, it's a broken bridge that won't ever be repaired because the god of the radius doesn't want it to be fixed. Now, I like this idea from, now pardon if I butchered your name, Eliaza Mendoza, 80506. My guess is that the radius acts sort of like an antenna or a bridge for the spiritual beings between the two dimensions. Now, as I stated before with the previous theory from your fave toaster, this is definitely plausible, where this red orb is the bridge to different timelines, different worlds, and while we are affecting everything within our world, the bridge is still connected, and it will affect everything else. Now, the radius could be a larger god than we could ever imagine, by the way, like, for example, the Titan Kronos is the father of Zeus. The core of it all could be Kronos, while this world here, the one we work with, the one we are on, is the son, Zeus. Now clearly, this is just a weird connection, but it's one that makes sense, as the mirrored world theory is quite relevant here, as we are all connected to one particular being, one god. But if we are in a dimensional split, is the god of the radius the alien, the red orb, the anomaly, the proprietor, the sole proprietor in this entire creation? This experimentation has expanded and is much larger than we had imagined, and it's being unraveled before our eyes and our minds. Many of the community wonder if it's a simulation created from the god of the radius, creating data of its own, possibly with different timelines, collecting data at an exceptional rate, all for its amusement. And that is very, very likely that this god just wants to play and collect data for its own devices. This god is playing with its own creation. And there you have it, the final part for Into the Radius lore. There's sure to be more subjects and theories. Comment them down below or chat with me in the live chat on Twitch. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, I know this was much shorter than the previous two, but there wasn't really much to add other than the further discussion of theories. So if you want to discuss even further, then I suggest you comment or chat with me. Or you can even join my Discord. I'm open to discuss lore there as well. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. Now we have to wait for the sequel. And you'd be damn right with that, I will be creating more lore for Into the Radius.